Hello everyone, Melissa here with your Melissa Moments. So, we're still in this wonderful pandemic here. We still aren't back to the way things used to be, and that has caused my husband and I to spend a lot more time together, which has also caused us to communicate more, which is never a bad thing in my opinion. And we kind of, we talk and we reminisce and we talk about, the old days growing up, that kind of thing. And one thing that came to me, and I've mentioned this before to my husband and maybe even on here, but one thing that I miss about being a kid, and there's not much to be honest, but one thing I do miss is how my parents knew our neighbors. Do you remember this? Do you remember growing up and your parents knew your neighbors and your neighbors knew you and you knew them? And not only did you know them, but they'd come over all the time. All the time they would come over. Just in the backyard, they'd come over, in the summertime. Their kids would come play with me. They'd talk, they'd get along. My parents had so many parties. I can't even remember how many parties they had. Like in our, I grew up in the 80s. We had a basement that had the old 80s basements with the big wet bar kind of thing down there, and everyone's smoking and drinking because it was the 80s, right? Smoking and drinking and laughing and dancing and music. And my parents had parties all the time with tons of people, neighbors, friends, always. And nowadays, most people don't know their neighbors. People that live right next door to them. Even people that live in duplexes, where you literally share a wall, or apartment buildings. You don't know who's on the other side of that wall. You don't know their name. You don't know what they do. You don't know if they're a good person, a bad person. If they went missing one day, you'd have no clue. And I find that so sad. I always thought that was nice. You need something. Oh crap, I'm baking and I don't have any eggs. I'll just go to the neighbor and borrow an egg or a cup of sugar, right? Or, I'm building a deck. I don't have a level. I'll go to the neighbors and borrow a level. And not only that, you go over to borrow the level to say, hey, Mark, I'm making a deck here and I don't have my level. I can't find it. Do you have one I could borrow? Not only would they be like, oh, sure, chances are they'd say, well, hell, let me come over and give you a hand. Let me help you build that deck. Do you remember that? I can't be the only one to remember that. How awesome it was. Your parents felt safer because you knew the neighbors, they knew the neighbors, neighbors knew you. They were like, yeah, sure, go walk down the street. Go down to the kid's house, 5 houses away. Because you knew everyone and everyone knew you. And it just gave you more of a sense of being safe, and it was okay. Right? Now, I gotta say, my husband and I, we're pretty lucky where we are right now. We've been in our house for, I think, 11 years this year. We've been in our house, and we finally have amazing neighbors. And we know our neighbors. The neighbors directly on either side of our house, we know very well. And they're awesome people. They're awesome. They help us whatever we need. We help them out. I'm always taking them baking or treats. Even on the other side of that, 2 houses down, we know those neighbors. And they're awesome people. Across the street. Now, we know the people across the street, not as well, but we do know them and we say hi and it's all friendly. And even at Christmas time, I don't know if it was the pandemic, I don't know what it was, but I was really thinking about this and I'm like, wow, we've been here 11 years. The people across the street, they've been here longer because they were here when we moved in. And I know his name and we wave and stuff, but it was at not Christmas time, but winter time. We had pretty bad snowfall. My husband's vehicle got stuck and he came over and helped push him out. Like, how nice was that? So at Christmas time, I was like, you know what? I'm going to send them a Christmas card. I mean, we've been here 11 years. I've never sent them a Christmas card. I mean, they never sent me one either, but they seem like good people. They seem like nice people, right? I should get to know them. And I put a little note in there saying, you know what? We regret that we've lived here 11 years and we've never had a conversation with you. We've never gotten to know you. I know right now we're in the middle of this pandemic, but hopefully one day we can get together. And it was shortly after I sent them that Christmas card that I was going out to my car and he was going out to his car and he was like, hey, thanks for the card. Absolutely. You know, as soon as we get through this pandemic, we should have a block party. And I have not heard that term since growing up in the 80s. Do you remember block parties? How fun that was? You know, you go to the city, you get a permit, you can get them to fucking close the street off. Close the whole motherfucking street. And everyone comes out and everyone's drinking and eating and talking and getting to know each other. And I was just like, wow, yes, a block party. We need to do that. And of course, we're still in the pandemic, so we haven't done that yet. But I can't wait because I know that time will come. And it got me to thinking because when my husband and I were looking to buy a house, we did something that apparently nobody does. Nobody does this apparently. But we were looking at this house and we were like, before we buy a house, because we looked at a few houses and there was a few that we actually had offers in on. But before we put an offer in on any house, you know what we did? We went and talked to the neighbors. That's right. I know you're shocked. I should have told you to sit down first. But we did. We went on either side of the house we were thinking of purchasing. And we knocked on their door. And we did this for a couple of reasons. Number one, in most cases, we weren't familiar with the area. Like, we didn't grow up there. We didn't really know. So we wanted to ask questions. And of course, a realtor is going to tell you whatever the fuck they can to sell the house. They're not necessarily always honest. So we wanted honest opinions. So we went next door and we introduced ourselves. We said, hi, Matthew and Melissa here. We're thinking of buying the house next door to you. We were just wondering, how long have you lived here? Do you like the area? Is there anything we should know? You know, do you have any issues with flooding, for example? Like, these are good things to know, right? And 9 times out of 10, the neighbors were awesome. They talked to us. They were like, oh yeah, we've been here this many years. We've never had an issue with flooding. You know, it's a pretty quiet street. Never had any issues with break-ins. You know, yeah, it'd be great if you moved in next door. Now, not only does this tell us about the area, about the street, maybe even they know something about that house that you're thinking of. Like, ooh, well, before you buy that house, make sure they get rid of that asbestos. You know, like, you don't know. You could find out so much information. But not only that, you get to see the person that you could potentially be living beside. That's always good to know. Because, I don't know about you, but I don't really want to live next to a dick. I did that once. It didn't go well. I'd rather live next to someone who's kind and nice, that I don't think I'm going to run into a problem with, right? Because don't forget, chances are, you share a fence with this person, right? So at some point, if you're planning on living there for a long time, your fence is probably going to need to be replaced, which means you're going to have to work with your neighbor. Like, don't you want to know who the fuck you're living beside? You can tell so much. They open their door. Maybe they're a crazy cat lady and this overwhelming smell of cat just hits you in the face when they open the door. You got to ask yourself, do you want to live next to that, right? Maybe they open the door and they're in their underwear smoking and drinking at 8 a.m. Now, some people may be okay with that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning. I'm aware, right? But you got to ask yourself, do you want to live next to that for as long as you think you're going to be living there? I was shocked how many people don't do this when they're considering buying a house. I've talked to some people we know and who were buying a house at the time. I'm like, oh, well, what are the neighbors like? Oh, I don't know. You didn't go and talk to them? No. This was something foreign to them. Now, we're not crazy, right? People do this, don't they? I mean, because they fucking should. Think about it now. When you moved into the house or the apartment or whatever you're currently in, did you check out your neighbors? If you didn't, are you wishing you had? It's not that hard to do. It's pretty easy. And it gave us lots of information. And it helped us decide, yes, we want to buy this house, or no fucking way I want to live next to that. Because you have zero control over your neighbors. Zero. They could be crazy. They could be partying all weekend till 3, 4 in the morning. If you have a young child or a newborn at home, you might not want to live next to that. Same with if you're going into a new development, right? And this house that you're looking at is to buy is built and done, but all around you, it's empty lots, or they're in the middle of construction. You got to ask yourself, do we want to put up with noise and construction for the next 5 years or more? Do we want to deal with that? These are questions you need to ask yourself before you move into a fucking place. So, like I said, my husband and I, we're very happy with where we are right now. Our neighbors are awesome. Can't wait to have that block party as soon as this fucking pandemic is done. Doesn't that sound nice? Just get to know the people around you. And not only that, but it's nice because I know, if my husband and I, obviously not now, but when we did travel, it'd be a quick, hey, we're headed out for a week. Can you keep an eye on the place? Absolutely. They do the same when they go out. Hey, we're going away. Just keep an eye on things. Absolutely. Just to know that someone out there is watching, that someone out there has got your back. We can't ask for anything more than that. Especially now, right? This pandemic, if anything, has caused us to not go out and socialize with the people we usually socialize with. I can't tell you how many times it's just nice to go out to my car, or getting in, just getting home, and my neighbor's outside, just to sit, 6 feet away, but just to talk. Hey, how's it going? Good. How's it going with you? Good. Just that interaction to know, hey, there's someone who lives right next door that I can chat at if I need to. It's awesome. Highly recommend it. If you don't know your neighbor, get to know your neighbor. Send them a note, Send them a card to say, hey, neighbor, I know we've never met, but I've lived here for a while now, and this pandemic's really hard. I'm just wanting to introduce myself and see how things are going over there. Because you don't know. Maybe that person next door is a senior citizen who doesn't have anyone, who is so lonely because they can't go out and do anything. You don't know what's next door, or do you? I hope you do. And this has been a Melissa Moment.